Welcome to the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. I'm a former brick and mortar store owner turned retail expert who is passionate about entrepreneurship and has experienced the highs and lows of running a retail business. Whether you're a seasoned retail veteran or an aspiring store owner, consider me your guide on this store owning journey. If you're looking to run a profitable and growing business that doesn't drain you, follow my 6 stages of shopkeeping and subscribe to this show. Join me for a journey of continuous learning where protecting your mind, maximizing profit, and determining your own schedule are a priority. Get ready to work smarter, profit more, and grow your retail business. Welcome to episode 249 of the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. Why your margins matter more than ever and how not to price yourself out of business. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. Today, we're talking about something that every store owner probably wants to review or may even talk about with a biz bestie, but maybe the discomfort of it all is having you avoid it, your margins. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this because with rising costs, inflation, and the constant pressure to keep your customers happy, this is one of the trickiest but most important things you need to dial in this year. So if you've been wrestling with pricing decisions or you're feeling nervous about charging too much, this episode is for you. And if you're in Master Shopkeepers, I want to mention the Pricing Strategies Masterclass. It's in the lab, or you can search for it in the Facebook group. I highly recommend it. Because what I find, especially if you're in like stages 2 and maybe early on in 3, after you've opened and you're starting to run the business and you've never run a retail business before, you don't realize that there are a variety of pricing strategies. It isn't just take the cost of the item and multiply it times 2. That isn't the case. There are lots of things to consider when it comes to pricing, and there's a whole 1-hour masterclass on the subject. So go ahead and watch that if you're in Master Shopkeepers. All right, let's get started with this episode. Inflation isn't going anywhere, and neither are your expenses. So let's start with the obvious. Inflation, it's not just the price of eggs or gas, it's the cost of your inventory, shipping, packaging, credit card fees, payroll, rent, basically everything it takes to run your store has gone up. Now, here's the problem. Most store owners are eating these costs. You're absorbing higher wholesale prices and increased overhead because you're afraid to scare off customers with higher prices. But let me ask you this. If your costs went up by 20% and you didn't raise prices, where do you think that money is going to come from? It's going to come from your profit, your paycheck, your savings, and for some of you or many of you, your mental health, because that means now you can't pay down the debt. And debt is very burdensome. I don't think it always needs to be. It's burdensome, though, to some of you. And I'll be teaching about this in August in the Cash Flow Clarity session in Master Shopkeepers. But I know how heavy debt can feel to some of you. So mental health is important. You cannot outwork bad margins. You will run yourself ragged trying to make up the difference in volume, and that's not always sustainable. So what are margins really? And this is for those of you who are new to running a store or haven't opened up yet. And if you were like me and had experience in another type of career or industry, I just want to make sure that I'm covering this for those of you who are just learning. So before we go any further, let's just define margins real quick, because I also know some of you avoid looking at these metrics or understanding what they are. You almost like avoid them like they're a bad X. All right, your margin is the percentage of revenue you keep after covering the cost of the product. So if you sell a candle for $20 and it costs you $10, your margin is 50%. You have $10 left after you pay $10 for that candle to pay for everything else in your business. Seems simple, right? But too many store owners only look at the price they paid and what they think they can charge without actually calculating if they're keeping enough to cover all their expenses and pay themselves. So here's what I want you to hear loud and clear. And this is one of those times where I'm going to tell you to pause and listen. Stop the multitasking. Your margin is your business's breathing room. I'm going to say that one more time. Your margin is your business's breathing room. No margin, no profit. No profit, no paycheck. No profit, no paying on debt. So many things that profit can help you with in your business. It's that simple. Now, I understand when it comes to pricing that it's a balancing act. How do you raise prices without losing customers? And I know what you're thinking, but Kathy, my customers are already complaining about prices. I'm not sure if that's at the norm right now, right? Like I haven't heard that from Master Shopkeepers members. And we are focusing on margins and expenses and all things cash flow this year. So I would say that's probably happening way less than what you think. But in your mind, you're thinking that's what's going to happen. You don't want to lose those customers. You want to stay affordable, and I get it. And here's where the balancing act comes in. You can't just slap a $5 increase on every product and call it a day. Let's just first say that. I completely understand that. You need to know, though, where the price threshold is, the point where your customers start to say, nope, that's too much. But it's important to also mention this, that threshold isn't always where you think it is. It actually can be higher than you expect. It's just that we start to worry and fear creeps in. Most store owners undervalue what they sell, what they offer, the experience you provide. I know this to be true. You assume people won't pay more because you wouldn't pay more. That happens a lot as well. But you're not your customer. You're the savvy, budget conscious, behind the scenes retailer who knows the wholesale price, the markup, and the shipping fees. Your customers don't. They buy because of the experience, the convenience, the product, and because they love you and your store. So here's how you start juggling all the balls when it comes to pricing, margins, inflation, etc. I even hate saying it because it's like you just hear it in every single article and social media post. It's like the I word I never want to hear again. I just know that this year it's a topic that I can't avoid, right? If I'm avoiding it, that means you're avoiding it. And that means I'm not setting you up for success. So here are 8 ways to protect and improve your margins. The good news is that you don't have to just raise prices on everything and hope for the best. There are multiple ways that you can improve your margins without turning off your customers. Number 1, audit your margins. Yes, actually run the numbers. Start by looking at your top selling products and calculate the margin on each one. Now, I know for those of you who are in stages 3, 4, and 5, for those of you who have taken my quiz and understand the stages of running a retail business, those of you who are more experienced, you know your margins. You pay attention to this. But maybe you haven't in a while. Maybe it's time to revisit it. If you're sitting at 30% margins, and for some of you, maybe if you're sitting on 30% margins across the board, for sure, something's got to give. But if you're like 30 to 40% on maybe more products than you realized, again, it's something that you're going to want to change. Number 2, strategically raise prices, not across the board. Not everything needs a price hike. Some products can handle a bigger increase because maybe they're unique or handmade or exclusive to your store. Others may need smaller increases to stay competitive. I understand that. Number 3, bundle and add value instead of just raising prices. Now, bundling, that speaks my kind of consumer shopping language. I love convenience, especially when I'm shopping for gifts. So can you create gift bundles, value packs, or add-ons that increase perceived value without feeling like you're nickel and diming customers? People pay more when they feel like they're getting more. The other interesting thing is this isn't quite bundling. It's like bundling and discounting at the same time. I recently went to a Master Shopkeeper store in Fairview, Ohio. Shout out to Leslie at Larkin Vines. I shop there pretty regularly, and she was having a big event, and I stopped in. And she had mystery bags, and they were adorable. And they're super simple brown craft bags. I think it had her label on it. Pretty gingham, checkered, plaid ribbon tied in a bow at the top. And I decided that I was going to buy 2 of the mystery bags and put it in my gift closet. Because if I go to like a dinner party or an event or something, hosted by somebody in their home, I like to take a gift. And what a great idea to grab one of those mystery bags. I don't even know what's in it, but I know most likely because I know Leslie's store that she carries a lot of gift and like hostess type gifts. So I know that whatever's in the bag, it's going to be great quality. It's going to be fantastic. But that's an example of bundling. Now, it's bundling paired with discounting, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but it was convenient for me to grab that and know that I have that in my gifting closet so that it's easy for me to grab and go. Number 4, control costs behind the scenes. Margins aren't just about what you charge. Negotiate better deals with your vendors. Look at your shipping rates. What can you do to improve that? Are you maybe ordering 10 times from the same vendor and getting charged shipping? Each time you order from that vendor, could you consolidate those orders? Could you maybe go to 5 orders instead? Now you're saving on shipping for 5 other orders that you would have placed, especially if you know that it's a good turning, faster selling item. Why do you keep paying for shipping? Go ahead and order more if you feel confident about that item. If it sells well, eliminate all those extra shipping charges. Can you streamline operations and reduce waste in your store? We have a Cut the Fat masterclass in Master Shopkeepers. So if you're a Master Shopkeepers member and you're like, I think my operating expenses are probably too high, or I did the profit analyzer calculator and the operating expenses is where my business is leaking profit, definitely watch the Cut the Fat masterclass, because every dollar you don't spend is a dollar back in your pocket or back in that profit bucket that you can use to pay towards that debt, that you can use to build a reserve account, that you can use to pay yourself. Number 5, enhance your product mix. Look at your assortment. If you're selling too many low margin basics, like if you go back to number 1, when I said audit your margins, if you're finding that you have way too many low margin basics, start adding a few high margin products. You might be surprised at how many customers might possibly buy them. Now, that isn't always going to be the case, but just to share a relatable story here, my sister and I would tell ourselves early on, our customers wouldn't buy lamps or wall art. It's just too expensive. They're not going to do it. Boy, were we mistaken. We were so mistaken. They loved buying lamps from us and wall art, and they were priced at points that were still in line with our customers' pricing threshold, but yet still higher margin, which just made more money for the business. So consider that when you're looking at your product mix. Now, I don't know if there's necessarily there is no magic formula for every single one of your businesses. All of your businesses are really unique. I know this. I now have worked with so many one-on-one clients and Master Shopkeepers members. I can't always give like blanket advice for everyone because all of your businesses are so different, but a healthy mix of high and low margin products can be worth considering. Sometimes letting the high margin products carry the weight while the basics bring in the foot traffic. This episode is brought to you by my new free resource, a ChatGPT guide for retailers. There is no other tool that has saved me as much time in 2024 as ChatGPT has. My new guide will help you learn about this free artificial intelligence tool. Yes, it's free, and it's not as intimidating as it sounds. I share 14 ways retailers are using the tool now to save them time and effort. I also share real store owner examples, and the results from one search will blow your mind. Visit savvyshopkeeper.com/ChatGPT to sign up for this free guide. Number 6, improve inventory management. Man, we are working on this in Master Shopkeepers through the cash flow clarity sessions this year. We actually really started to dig into the meaty sessions in April. June and July are going to really dig into categories and inventory even more. Every product sitting on your shelves is cash sitting still. The longer it sits, the higher the chance you'll mark it down. So implement an effective system to minimize overbuying, avoid stock shortages, and reduce waste. The lesson in July that we're doing in Master Shopkeepers will give so many of the members a lot of insight into what's happening by category. We're digging deep by category because better inventory management results in better buying, fewer markdowns, and healthier margins. Number 7, reduce markdowns. Now, I know you love a good sale. I love a good sale. Some of your customers probably love a good sale. I am not opposed to sales and I'm not opposed to markdowns. But when you discount too much or too quickly or too often, you might be training your customers to wait for the deal, and then you're cutting directly into your profits. I know some of you experience pain, like emotional pain around dead inventory, and you want to get rid of the pain. So some of you default to like immediately discounting 50%. Again, I'm not opposed to sales or markdowns, but what I'm suggesting is maybe try gradual markdowns this year. Could you try discounting 25, 30% to start? Because I know most people will say 20% isn't enough. But could you try that? Every store, every set of customers is very, very different. I think what's worth exploring here is testing. If you've never done a deep dive into your inventory and stock, you must, especially this year. This is, again, something that I've been doing, spending a lot of time on in Master Shopkeepers. They will be using data to make smarter decisions, using real numbers to guide pricing, ordering, and markdown decisions instead of relying on gut feelings. And again, I don't discount gut feelings or intuition. I think that's an incredible part of running a retail business. But in this case, especially this year, I think data is going to be even more important. So what happens if you don't protect your margins? If you're still thinking, I'll just keep my prices low because I'm really comfortable there and make up the difference in volume, I'm just going to sell more. I just want to have you pause on that. You're not Costco. You do not have a warehouse and a corporate legal team and 3,000 employees. You're a small business. You have overhead, limited staff, and limited hours. Now, I'm not saying that you can't increase volume. If you feel like you can really increase volume and you know how to do that, either through marketing or some other way, by all means do it. But most retail business owners, independent retail owners, may not know how to do that. And you might be thinking, well, I'm just going to get more sales. I want you to get more sales, but I just want you to keep all of this into consideration. If your margins shrink, you'll work harder for less. You'll burn out. You'll watch your bank account dwindle, and eventually you'll question whether all of this is even worth it. And I don't want you to do that because it often is worth it. It's worth it to do the work that I've just talked about in this episode. You just have to stop giving away your profits in the name of being affordable. Unless you know your numbers so well that you know you have wiggle room to support being affordable. And what do I mean by that? I have one client who had an aha moment last year who realized that she was buying for a customer who was willing to spend more. She identified that her ideal customer really does have a pricing threshold. They are thrifty. But she buys now taking that into consideration. She goes to the off-price show, for example, in Vegas, because she can get incredible deals at the off-price show. Like she's doing things like that. So again, not every store can support high margins, but not every store has customers who are thrifty and not willing to spend. I guess that's my point. Think about your store, your business, and go ahead and dig into all the information that you have access to. So let's talk about customer pushback. Well, some customers complain when you raise prices, maybe. I mean, a couple might leave. Yes, of course, that could happen. But they're probably the customers who were shopping on price alone, not because they loved what you do, how you make them feel, or the community you've built. You're not running a charity. You're running a business. And you need to keep the lights on so that you can continue serving your community, your employees, yourself, your family. Your best customers, the ones who appreciate you, they will understand. And if you do this right, they probably won't even blink. There was a time where my sister and I realized that we needed to raise our prices. We took the same approach that I mentioned earlier because we were newbies, had no idea what we were doing, and we just 2x'd everything. Boy, like if I just go back in time, all the things that I could do over again differently. I also recently joked with my sister and said, maybe one day in the future, after Logan graduates high school or maybe even college, like I would open a store again. And I think, gosh, it would look so different. Anyhow, I also want to give you some action steps because I don't want to leave you hanging here. You're like, well, what can I do? And I've talked about some things. So here's a little bit of homework if that's helpful. And I don't normally do that on episodes, but here's a little bit of a homework list for you. Pick 10 to 20 products in your store and go ahead and look at the margins. Revisit what those margins are if you haven't looked. What's your actual profit after the cost of those items? Hopefully it's 50 to 60% margins. And for some of you, I understand that that's not possible, but hopefully that's the case. And if it isn't, what can you do out of all the things that I mentioned earlier to try to improve that? Identify which items could handle a price increase. And you can start small. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. 3, find one way to cut costs this month. Whether it's renegotiating a vendor deal, cutting waste, maybe stop the habit of buying all the fun supplies that you see on Amazon, because that happens. Finding a better shipping option. Every dollar counts at this point. In fact, every quarter, every nickel counts. Do not underestimate the process of doing a deep dive into your operating expenses. 4, take a look at your product mix. Are you relying too heavily on those low margin products? What could you do to maybe introduce or bring in better margin products? Number 5, watch your inventory levels like a hawk. This is one of the things that we're doing in the July session through Cash Flow Clarity. When I do this category session with clients, it is enlightening because it isn't, again, a one size fits all. It usually isn't that they're over inventoried in everything. It's usually that they're over inventoried in certain categories. So be careful not to overbuy. Stop marking things down just to get them to move without knowing if a markdown is even justified. Number 6, be prepared with a response for customers who might have an opinion on your pricing. Now, I will say this, artificial intelligence is a great resource for this. So if you anticipate that maybe somebody's going to say something and you're like, I don't even know what I would say, how I would respond, I am all for being prepared, and you won't be prepared for every conversation or everything that somebody says to you, right? Like, how many times does somebody say something to you and you're like, man, had I just thought about this, I would have answered or replied to them in a really different way. But there, you can do some legwork here. You can go to ChatGPT and say, if a customer says this, how could I respond based on my values? I think that's important too. You can still be honest, be kind, and you don't have to apologize for running a business. So what can you do within ChatGPT? What kind of conversation can you have with ChatGPT to help you in terms of customer communication if this does come up? And if is my point. When my sister and I increased our prices, no one said anything. And we did it gradually on several occasions over the course of a few years. And no one ever said anything. So even though our minds say, oh my gosh, but somebody's going to say something. And then how do I react? Will I get defensive? I don't want to start crying. I don't want to be emotional. I don't want to be angry. You don't have to be. Start to prepare yourself in case that actually happens. Number 7, track your sales after you make a pricing change. You don't just want to increase and then walk away. You still want to look at the data. You don't want to make any assumptions that customers are going to start buying it. You might find that some of the things that you increase prices on, now your customers aren't buying, and you might want to go back on that. And that's okay too. Like I said in the last episode, in episode 248, we're business owners. We're like scientists. We're constantly in the lab testing things. So it's okay if you test and find that you've passed that threshold for the customers and you have to go back to that original price. Maybe you can try a higher price on something else. But I think it is helpful to see, are customers still actually buying, or was it just a fear in your head? All right, it's time to wrap this up. I know this isn't the fun, glamorous part of retail. I don't get to talk about the fun stuff all the time. It's not the window displays, the Instagram reels, or the community events. But this is how you stay in business. This is how you make sure you're not working 60 hours a week and wondering why there's nothing left in the bank account at the end of the month. Margins matter now more than ever. You're not price gouging. I think that's important to say. Most independent retailers are very heart-centered people, right? Like that's not what we do. But you are protecting the thing that you've worked so hard to build, and there's nothing wrong with that. So go audit your numbers, audit your operating expenses, look at your margins, look at your inventory, raise a few prices, tighten up behind the scenes, and give yourself permission to make a profit without feeling guilty about it. You deserve it. If you want to see the show notes to this episode or find links to anything I mentioned, visit my blog at savvyshopkeeper.com/episode 249. That's savvyshopkeeper.com/episode 249. Until the next episode, be savvy and boss up.
If you love chilling mysteries, unsolved cases, and a touch of mom-style humor, Moms and Mysteries is the podcast you've been searching for. Hey guys, I'm Mandy.
And I'm Melissa. Join us every Tuesday for Moms and Mysteries, your gateway to gripping, well-researched true crime stories. Each week, we deep dive into a variety of mind-boggling cases as we shed light on everything from heists to whodunits. We're your go-to podcast for mysteries with a motherly touch. Subscribe now to Moms and Mysteries wherever you get your podcasts.